Sitting in my car in the parking lot right now. Doors locked. I'm literally aching because I just found a receipt from a jewelry store downtown for a diamond tennis bracelet. $2,400. I didn't get a bracelet. I didn't even know he'd been downtown this week. And the worst part is, I was taking out the recycling and I smelled it. This sweet flowery perfume is all over the paper, it's not mine. I use that basic citrus stuff. This smells like something a 20-something would wear to a club. Anyway, on paper, my life looks great. I'm 50. I live in one of those neighborhoods where people basically go to war over their Christmas lights every November. Like, if your house doesn't look like a movie set, the neighbors look at you like you've just given up on life. My day-to-day is just a lot. Last Tuesday, I spent forever in a pharmacy drive-thru because the person in front of me was arguing about a prescription, and the pharmacist kept coming back out. I'm just sitting there, staring at the car in front of me, and my phone keeps buzzing with those notifications that my storage is full. Again, I probably have 10,000 unread emails because I can't find the time to actually delete them, and the phone just won't stop screaming at me. Just exhausted. Last weekend, we drove 12 hours for my son's soccer tournament. We stayed in some crappy hotel that smelled like old gym socks just so he could play 3 games in some town I can't even pronounce, and I'm the one doing everything. The snacks, the check-ins, the schedule, all of it. Then I get home, and there's a letter from the mortgage company. Our escrow was short, so the monthly payment is jumping up by $300. Just like that. I remember showing the letter to my husband Mark. I was in the kitchen, still wearing these expensive leggings that I have to return because they peeled after one wash. Which is honestly a joke for $100. I told him, Mark, look at this. The mortgage is going up $300 a month. He didn't even look up from his phone. He just goes, well, figure it out, Michelle. Stop stressing. I stood there for a minute. Didn't say anything. That's how it always is. Stop stressing. Well, I'm the one figuring out how many grocery trips we have to cut back on to make it work. Then there's the social stuff. The girls' nights. I go because I have to if you stop going. That's when the gossip starts. Last week I was sitting there with Brenda and Susan, and they were doing that thing where they pretend to be sorry for you. You know? The poor you voice. Brenda goes, you look so tired, Michelle. Are you getting enough sleep? I told her I was fine. Then she says, it's just that Mark seems so energized lately. He's been hitting the gym every morning at 5, right? It's so inspiring. I just smiled and drank my wine. I didn't tell her that Hez hitting the gym at 5 a.m. while I'm waking up at 6 to pack lunches and keep the house from falling apart. I had this knot in my stomach, but I just kept smiling. In this neighborhood, you don't tell people your 50-year-old husband is suddenly obsessed with bicep curls. You just call it inspiring. So, fast forward to our anniversary. 25 years. Mark planned the whole thing. He told me not to worry about anything and book this fancy place in the city, the kind where you need a reservation months out. I spent 2 hours getting ready. I wore the dress that actually fits me, the one I only use for real occasions. When we got there, he was acting weird. Not like he forgot the date, but more like he was trying too hard. He was talking too much, bringing up stuff from when we first started dating that he hasn't mentioned in a decade. He said, remember that little cafe in Maine? That was the best summer of my life. I told him we were only in Maine for 2 weeks. We didn't spend the whole summer there. He just laughed. God, you're such a killjoy, Michelle. Just enjoy the night. Then he gave me the gift. A small velvet box with a necklace inside. It was beautiful. But while I was putting it on, I saw him checking his phone under the table. Every 2 minutes. He wasn't even hiding it. He'd glance down, swipe, and get this little smirk on his face. I asked him who he was texting. Just a work thing, he said. The merger is hitting a snag. I asked if it really couldn't wait until Monday, and he just said it couldn't. I didn't push it. Not then. I just sat there in the necklace, feeling like an idiot. But on the way home, his phone buzzed on the center console. He was in the restaurant bathroom when it happened. And the screen lit up. I didn't mean to look, but it was right there. A text from someone saved as MDAR. I just froze. MDAR, I didn't get it at first. I thought maybe a client or a mistake. But then I remembered my sister Sarah. Her married name is Miller, but she's always been obsessed with her middle name. Rose Sarah Miller Rose. Sarah and I have always had a complicated thing. She's the one who always got away with everything. She dropped out of college to find herself in Bali. While I was working 2 jobs to get my degree, she always makes family gatherings about her latest crisis. We hadn't spoken in months. She'd been at some wellness center in Arizona to deal with her spiritual misalignment or whatever she calls it. I didn't say anything to Mark for the rest of the night. I just drove the car in total silence, feeling sick to my stomach. When we got home, I watched him go upstairs to change. I waited until I heard the shower start. Then I went straight to the kitchen and started digging through the recycling. I didn't even know what I was looking for. I just knew I had to find something. And that's when I found the receipt. Still in the car. I can see him through the living room window, sitting on the couch. He's probably texting her right now. I didn't even take my shoes off when I walked in. Mark was on the couch, scrolling on his phone like he always does. I walked straight up to him and threw the receipt on his lap. I was like, $2,400 for a diamond bracelet? What's this, Mark? He didn't even jump. He looked at the paper, then looked up at me. He was like, what is this? I told him to stop. Stop acting like he didn't know. I told him. I found it in the recycling and that it smelled like some perfume that definitely wasn't mine. He actually sighed, like I was the one being a pain. He leaned back and told me I was overreacting, and that the bracelet was a surprise for me. He said he was waiting for the right moment. I stared at him. Our anniversary was, was it 3 hours ago? No, 4. He'd already given me a necklace. It was nice, but it wasn't a tennis bracelet. He shrugged. He said he wanted to give me 2 things, one for the night, and one for later. Then he started complaining that I always make everything a federal case, and that I was looking for a fight because I was stressed. I told him I was stressed because the mortgage went up $300 a month. I'm the only one who remembers our son needs new cleats for spring, and then him finding receipts for jewelry I've never seen. He stood up, grabbed the receipt, and ripped it in half. He told me, fine, it's not for you. Happy now? He said he was dealing with big things and told me to leave it alone. Then he went upstairs and slammed the door. I stood there in the living room for a while, looking at the pieces of paper on the rug. Next morning was a mess. I had to go to the mall to return some leggings, and I was already on edge. I stood in line for 20 minutes, and the girl at the counter was being a total jerk about the refund. I stared her down until she did it. I didn't even say thank you. Walking back to the parking lot, I ran into Omar Harris. He lives 3 houses down. He's the kind of guy who knows whose lawn is too long, or who's getting a divorce before the lawyers are even involved. He thinks he runs the whole street. He gave me this fake smile and asked if everything was okay at home, because I looked tired. I told him I was fine. He stepped closer and lowered his voice. He didn't even say hi properly. He was just like, hey, just so you know, I saw Mark at that fancy boutique hotel downtown last Tuesday? Or was it Wednesday? No, definitely Tuesday. The one with the rooftop bar, and he wasn't alone. I felt sick to my stomach. I asked him what he meant. Omar shrugged and looked around. He said he thought I should know because people talk, and he didn't want people guessing why Mark was spending so much time downtown. He wasn't trying to be nice. He was letting me know that he knew, and probably everyone else did too. It felt like a warning. Like needed to handle this quietly. So the neighborhood didn't start talking. I said, thanks, Omar. He told me I was welcome. Then immediately started talking about how the Ho was voting on holiday lighting guidelines on Friday. He reminded me to have my display up by the 1st, because we couldn't have another dark house situation like the Millers had last year. I walked away. I knew he was still watching me. When I got home, I went straight to the office. I wanted to get into Mark's iCloud. He thinks I'm tech challenged, but I've seen him type his passwords plenty of times. I sat down at the computer, and of course a notification pops up saying the storage is full. Spent the next hour trying to clear out enough space so I could actually sync the data. I had to delete a ton of old emails and random junk. My head was pounding. I wanted to see the messages. Once I finally got in, I searched for MDAR. There were dozens of threads. It one's to client or a coworker. One message from Mark said, I miss you already. The anniversary dinner was a nightmare. She spent the whole time complaining about the bill. I can't wait until we're back in Arizona. And the response was from Sarah. My sister, my lower back was killing me. This office chair is from the 90s and the lumbar support is completely gone. I shifted my weight, trying to find a spot that didn't pinch, but the cushion just felt like a hard piece of plywood. She wrote, "I can't believe you actually went through with it." The necklace was a nice touch though, a little basic, but it keeps her quiet. I'm counting down the days until my retreat is over. I need you here. I sat there. I didn't cry. I was too tired. I kept scrolling through the photos. There were pictures of them together in Arizona. Not at a wellness center, but at a resort. They were holding hands on a balcony. There was a tiny, greasy fingerprint right over Mark's face on the screen. I tried to wipe it off with my sleeve, but it just smeared the oil around, making it look like he had a weird smudge on his cheek. I spent a good minute rubbing at it, but the smudge just grew larger. Mark was looking at her in a way he hasn't looked at me in years. The messages went back months. While I was driving 12 hours to a soccer tournament, staying in some gross hotel and making sure our son had Gatorade, Mark was texting my sister about how much he hated my stressing. Then I heard the garage door open. Mark was home. I closed the laptop fast and went into the kitchen. I was standing there with a glass of water when he walked in. He looked refreshed, like he didn't have a care in the world. He asked how my day was. I told him it was fine and that I returned the leggings. He didn't even look at me. He grabbed a beer from the fridge. He said, "Good, maybe now you can stop talking about them." I looked at him and asked, "Is Sarah still in Arizona?" He froze for a second, just a tiny flicker. Then he turned around and smiled. He said, "Yeah, I think so. Why? You thinking of calling her?" I said. "Maybe that I felt like we hadn't spoken in a while." He laughed. That condescending laugh he uses when he thinks I'm being dramatic. He told me that we always clash, and that I should leave her alone because she's trying to figure things out. I didn't say anything. I watched him drink his beer. That night I went into the guest room and started a list. I didn't give it a title. I just wrote expenses. I listed everything: the jewelry receipt, the Arizona trips, the business dinners. I checked our joint account and found 3 separate withdrawals of $500 over the last 2 months. He'd labeled them as office supplies. I spent the next few days pretending. I went to the neighborhood potluck on Thursday. Had to fake it the whole time. Had to listen to Brenda talk about her kitchen remodel for 40 minutes. Brenda leaned in and whispered that she heard Omar saw Mark downtown. She asked if everything was okay because I looked off. I smiled and took a sip of my wine. I told her everything was wonderful, and that Mark was just working hard on a merger. Brenda nodded, but she gave me this look like she was pretending to be sorry, but she actually just wanted the details so she could tell Susan later. I went home and checked my phone. Another iCloud storage full notification. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I went to the laundry room and started the dishwasher. I stood there listening to the water, thinking about the mortgage and the diamond bracelet that was probably on my sister's wrist right now. I walked into the bedroom and saw Mark's phone on the nightstand. He was in the shower. I picked it up and opened his calendar. There was an entry for next weekend as weekend getaway. I put the phone back exactly where it was. Then I went to the closet and pulled out my suitcase. I started packing, but I did it slowly. 1 shirt, 1 pair of pants. I didn't want him to hear the zipper. The shower turned off, so I quickly shut the suitcase and pushed it under the bed. Mark walked in, drying his hair with a towel. He looked at me and asked what I was doing. I told him nothing, just tidying up. He nodded and sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't say anything for a minute. Then he looked at me and said, "We need to talk about the Christmas lights. Michelle, Omar says the neighbors are already starting. We can't be the last house on the block again." I just looked at him, so he's just standing there, talking about those LED lights, warm white or cool white. I didn't even care. Meanwhile, I've got a suitcase shoved under the bed, and a whole list of his lies running through my head. I just told him warm white was fine, whatever he wanted. He looked happy, which, I don't know, it just felt gross. He kissed my cheek, and I almost gagged. I waited until he left the room before I went back to the laptop. I started digging through the iCloud again. Not just messages, but the files section. I found these PDFs that were supposed to be tax prep and insurance updates. But when I opened one, it wasn't taxes. It was a bank statement for some account I'd never heard of. A private wealth thing downtown. The balance was Honestly, it was insane, like mid-six figures. I just sat there. My heart started hammering against my ribs and I actually had to lean on the desk so I wouldn't pass out. Then I saw the transfers, $5,000 a month for a year, coming right out of our son's college fund, and the cosigner was Haiti. My mother-in-law. I didn't move for a long time. I just stared at the screen. Haiti is, well, she's the perfect one in our neighborhood. Lives 3 streets over in a house that looks like a museum. She runs the charity galas and tells everyone that family is the only thing that matters. And all the while, she was helping him steal from our kid to fuel whatever this was with my sister. I couldn't even think straight. I tried to close the laptop, but my hands were shaking so bad I knocked over my water. It got all over the desk and a pile of mail, and I spent 10 minutes just scrubbing it up with napkins, panicking that Mark would hear me. Everything just felt like it was falling apart. Next morning, I had to take my son to soccer. It was one of those early ones where the grass is still soaking wet and everyone's in those huge puffer jackets, just looking miserable. I'm standing there with my coffee, and Haiti pulls up in her Range Rover. She gets out looking perfect as usual and comes up to me with that little tight smile. She tells me my gutters look clogged and says she has a guy who could fix them. I just looked at her. I didn't even see my mother-in-law. I just saw someone who knew exactly where the money went. I told her I was fine with my gutters. She blinked. Just once. Her smile stayed, but her eyes went cold, she told me. I looked frazzled and asked if I was taking any vitamins for brain fog. I didn't even answer. I just turned around and walked back to the car. I felt like I was vibrating on the way home. I stopped at the pharmacy for my blood pressure meds, which makes sense given the last 48 hours. I was stuck behind this woman who was fighting with the pharmacist over a coupon that wouldn't scan. I was just sitting there, staring at her bumper, when my phone buzzed. Another iCloud storage full notification. I actually started laughing, like out loud. My husband is cheating with my sister. My mother-in-law is helping him rob our son's future. And my phone is complaining it's out of space for photos. I got my medicine and drove straight to the bank. Downtown, I asked for a manager, showed him the PDFs and told him I thought there was fraud with my joint account. This guy looked like he'd rather be anywhere. Elsa took the papers into his office. I waited about 20 minutes. When he came back, he wouldn't even look at me. He just looked at the papers. He told me the signatures on the transfers didn't match mine. They were forged. And the other account was opened with some irregular power of attorney. I felt sick. Forged. He sat across from me at dinner for a year, knowing he was faking my signature to steal our son's money. I drove home in a daze. Brenda's car was parked next door. She and Susan were on the sidewalk, and they both stopped talking when they saw my car. "Michelle!" Brenda called out. She had that fake sing-song voice. "We were just talking about the holiday party. We're thinking of doing a theme. Maybe Winter Wonderland." I stopped and looked at her. "Is that what you guys do?" I asked. "Just talk about themes while everything is falling apart." Susan looked at Brenda. Brenda looked at me. "I don't know what you mean, honey," she said. "Are you feeling okay? You look really pale," I told her. It'd never been better, and slammed the door. Mark was in the kitchen making a sandwich. He smiles at me and asks if I ordered the lights, the ones that sync to music. He thought they'd be a hit on the street. I just put the bank printouts on the counter right next to his plate. "Who is the power of attorney, Mark?" I asked. He didn't even look at them at first. He just kept chewing. Then he asks, "What is this?" I told him it was the one he used to forge my name and move $60,000 to his mother. He stopped chewing and slowly put the sandwich down. For a second, I thought he was going to apologize, or maybe break down. Instead, he just sighed, like he was annoyed. "Look, Michelle," he said. "My mom and I were just making sure we actually had a safety net. You spend money way too fast. Michelle, I couldn't trust you with that," I told him. "He stole from our son and he's sleeping with my sister." He just leaned back and crossed his arms. He said, "Sarah understands the pressure he's under, and doesn't make everything a federal case. Said she's a supportive." "Supportive," I said. "Is that what we're calling it now?" Then he tells me that if I wasn't so high-strung, he wouldn't have had to do it. Said I made the house a pressure cooker, and nobody wants to be around me in one of my moods. Then the phone rings. It's Haiti. Mark puts it on speaker. "Mark, darling." Her voice is crisp and clear. "I just spoke with Brenda. She says Michelle is having some sort of breakdown in the driveway. Is everything all right? Do we need to call someone? I leaned over and spoke directly into the phone. Not having a breakdown. Him. Just wondering how much of the college fund you've already spent on your new sunroom. Silence. For like 10 seconds. Just the sound of the fridge, humming and Mark's heavy breathing. Then Heidi goes, "Well, I suppose the secret is out." Mark tells her she won't do anything because she's too worried about what the neighbors think. I didn't say anything. I just went to the kitchen and ripped the router out of the wall. The internet went dead. Mark looks at me confused. "What the hell are you doing?" "The lights can wait," I said. I went back to the bedroom to finish packing. I left the suitcase open on the bed. While I was folding a sweater, I saw a little note that had fallen out of Mark's pajama pocket. It was from Sarah. She wanted to go to Sedona for some spiritual alignments so they could leave the noise behind. I crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. I could hear Mark coming up the stairs, yelling about how I was being unreasonable and ruining the family. I didn't look up. I just took the property tax notice. One with the $300 jump hand, laid it on top of my clothes. He walks in and stops. He looks at the suitcase, then at me. "Where do you think you're going?" I didn't answer. I just checked the clock. 4:15. "I have to go to the post office," I said. I grabbed my keys and walked past him. I saw the guy next door trimming his hedges as I got in the car. I didn't wave. I just started the engine and backed out of the driveway. I hit the post office and sent 3 certified letters. One to Mark's office, one to Sarah's place in Sedona. Wait, was it Sedona or Scottsdale? Sedona. Right? And one to Heidi. No long emotional letter or asking how could you, none of that. Just a short note saying my lawyer would be reaching out about the forged signatures and the college fund. I paid for return receipts because I wanted them to actually sign for it. I wanted them to know I had the paper trail. When I got back to the car, my phone buzzed, iCloud storage full. I leaned my head against the steering wheel and screamed for 10 seconds. I couldn't even upload the bank statements to my lawyer's portal because my phone was jammed with 10 years of blurry soccer photos and screenshots of recipes I never actually made. I swear, why do I have 4 different versions of a slow cooker pot roast recipe? And there was this one photo of a weird bug from 2016 that was taking up way too much space for no reason. Spent 20 minutes in the parking lot, deleting old videos. Had to delete a clip of our son's first ball game. Felt kind of shitty, but whatever. I needed the space for the evidence. Then I called my lawyer Diane. She sounded like she'd smoked a pack a day since the 80s, and had zero patience for anyone. I told her about the forged power of attorney and the account Heidi co-signed. Diane told me to send everything. The PDFs, the statements, the messages. She said if he forged my name on a financial document, this wasn't just a messy divorce anymore, it was a crime. I told her I didn't really want him in jail. I wanted the money back. She laughed, not a nice sound. She told me that when you have a felony as leverage, you get what you want in the settlement. Told me to stop talking to him and let her handle it. Anyway, I went home. I sat in the car for a bit before going inside. The house looked normal. Hedges trimmed, porch clean. From the street, it looked fine. But inside, it was where a guy had been stealing from his own kid to fund a secret life with my sister. When I finally walked in, Mark was in the kitchen. He had this look on his face, like he couldn't decide if he should be the victim or the one in charge. He told me he'd called his lawyer and that I couldn't just rip the router out of the wall and leave. Said I was being unstable, and that if I was having some kind of breakdown, we needed to get me help. I didn't even look at him. Walked past and grabbed a yogurt from the fridge. The foil lid was stuck, and when I finally yanked it, it ripped halfway, spraying a bit of strawberry on my thumb. God, I hate these lids. He followed me, asking if I was even listening. Kept saying I was acting erratic. I took a bite of the yogurt and told him Diane says hello. He stopped mid-sentence. He asked, "Who the hell is Diane?" I didn't answer. Went upstairs and locked the bedroom door. Spent the rest of the night dealing with the travel soccer schedule for the Ohio tournament. 3-state trip. 4 days of hotelsa, total nightmare. Wait, was the hotel check-in at 3.0? I had to figure out the carpool with other moms and make sure the hotel breakfast wouldn't make my son sick. My head was killing me. Mark was pacing in the hallway, knocking on the door. He started talking about how we could work through this if I stopped. Being so high-strung, said he was sorry about the money, but it was for the greater good of the family. I put on my noise-canceling headphones and started a spreadsheet. Friday morning was the HOA meeting about the holiday lights. I didn't want to go, but I knew if I didn't, Omar would tell the whole neighborhood I'd finally snapped. Put on a blazer, covered the dark circles under my eyes with makeup, and drove to the community center. The room was full of people in Patagonia vests and white sneakers. Brenda saw me and basically leaped over a chair to get to me. She grabbed my arm and whispered that everyone was worried. Said Omar mentioned some situation in the driveway and asked if I needed a glass of wine or wanted to come to a girls' night on Tuesday. I looked at her, and I could tell she didn't actually care. She wanted the gossip, wanted to know if there was a mistress or some gambling debt. I gave her the fakest smile I could manage. Told her everything was wonderful, and that Mark and I were moving some stuff around in our investments for tax reasons. Brenda's face changed. The sympathy was gone, and she looked jealous. She asked what kind of investments. I told her it was confidential and walked away. The meeting was a circus. We spent 45 minutes arguing over whether cool white LEDs were too aggressive for the north side of the street. Omar was leading the whole thing, talking about neighborhood cohesion. I sat there, staring at the back of his head, and thinking about the $60,000 Mark took from the college fund. I was done. Everyone in the room was acting like any of this actually mattered. After that, I stopped at the CV's drive-through for my blood pressure meds. The line was 6 cars long and the person at the window was taking forever. I could hear the pharmacist talking about some insurance override. Sat there staring at the bumper of a brand new Cadillac in front of me. Wondered if the woman driving it was also deleting photos to make room for evidence. Wondered if her husband was stealing from their kids too. Then my phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. Michelle, seriously. Stop. Mark and I actually love each other. You're just bitter and trying to destroy something because you're unhappy with yourself. Be the bigger person and let us be. I didn't reply. Screenshotted it and emailed it to Diane. When I got home, Mark was waiting in the living room. He didn't look like the victim anymore. He looked scared. He told me his lawyer called, and that my lawyer was threatening a police report for fraud. Walked past him into the kitchen. I was thinking about the property tax. ID. Seen the notice that the mortgage payment was jumping another $300. Told him the mortgage went up again, and asked if he was covering it, or if it was coming out of that security fund he and his mother had. He stood up and started raising his voice, calling me cruel. Said he'd provided for the family for 15 years, and I was ungrateful. I turned around and looked at him. I didn't yell, I told him. You stole from our son. You slept with my sister. You forged my name. He tried to say it wasn't like that, but I held up my hand. Told him I didn't care how it was. I cared about the money. Diane wanted the college fund restored by Monday, plus the private account, or we were going to the DA. He looked like he'd been slapped. Sat back down and put his head in his hands. Asked where I was going to go. I told him I wasn't going anywhere. Yet I wanted the house. I wanted the equity and the deed in my name. And I wanted him to move into his mother's guest house, he said. I couldn't do that because it was a joint asset. I told him that since he used joint assets to commit a felony, the house seemed like a fair trade. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal papers. And pretending everything was fine. I still had to take our son to soccer practice. Stood in the rain with the other moms, talking about the Ohio trip. One of them, Susan, came up to me with this pitying look. She said she heard about the split and offered me a place to stay or someone to talk to. I knew Susan. Everyone knew her husband spent 4 days a month in Chicago on business trips that weren't business. Told her I was fine, and that I'd actually never felt more focused. She looked uncomfortable, and then started talking about hotels in Ohio. The tournament was the breaking point. 12-hour drive, and I did the whole thing myself. Mark didn't come. He was too busy panicking about how to pay back the college fund, without his mother losing her house. Also, my car started making this weird clicking sound in the engine. I'm pretty sure it's the timing belt, but the mechanic just told me it was settling, which is a total lie. My windshield wipers were also streaking, leaving these annoying arcs of grime every time it rained. Stayed in a hotel that smelled like old cigarettes and industrial cleaner. Spent the weekend running between fields with bags of orange slices and Gatorade, making sure our son had a jacket. While I was in the bleachers during the third game, Heidi texted me. She didn't apologize. She said Mark was devastated and that I was destroying the family over money. Said her son would remember that I was the one who tore everything apart. I wasn't even angry. I was bored, typed back. Hell, remember that his father stole his education to buy a bracelet for my sister. Bye. Heidi blocked her, then blocked Sarah. When I got back from Ohio, the house felt empty. Mark had moved most of his stuff into the guest room, but he was still hovering. Tried to be nice. Cooked dinner, talked about a new start if I dropped the legal pressure. I didn't really engage, treated him like a tenant I didn't like. The final papers were signed on a Tuesday. Diane had him completely cornered. He gave up the house and the private account, and signed a confession about the forgeries, so I wouldn't press charges. He walked out the front door with 2 suitcases and a box of office supplies. He stopped on the porch and looked back, saying, I was really doing this, that I was casting him out. I didn't say anything, stood in the doorway. He waited for a minute, probably waiting for me to cry or start an argument. But I had nothing left. I was tired. I hope she was worth it, he said, closed the door. Went into the kitchen and saw that property tax notice on the counter. Picked it up and threw it in the trash. Didn't care about the $300 anymore. I had the house and the money. Went into the living room and looked at the empty spot where the router used to be. I hadn't put it back yet. It was quiet. Sat on the couch and opened my laptop. Had stuff to do. The soccer schedule for next month needed updating. Had to find a new dentist for our son, because Mark's insurance was gone, and I had to figure out how to get rid of those holiday lights Omar wanted. Got the vacuum out of the closet. Started cleaning the rug, where the jewelry receipt had been ripped a month ago. Spent a long time on that one spot, scrubbing a stain I couldn't even see anymore. When I was done, I poured a glass of water. Stood there listening to the fridge hum, and looked at the clock. It was 5:30. Our son would be home from practice in 10 minutes. I went to the pantry and started pulling out snacks.